CSCI368 Network security. And first of all, I briefly introduce myself. So I'm Guoming Yang. I'm an associate professor in the School of Computing and Information Technology at University of Wollongong. So actually, before moving to Wollongong, I was in Singapore. I worked in the Temasek lab in NUS. So actually, nowadays I still have a lot of collaboration with people in Singapore, like Professor Hua Yin in NTU, and also Dr. Hong Wei Ling in the NUS and Singtel joint cybersecurity lab. Right, so we are actually working on a new ISO standard related to network security. So I may give some information. Actually, it's related to some of the contents in this subject. So I may give some information later. All right. So actually, this is my research area. So first of all, so what is this subject about? So it will cover a range of topics in computer network security. So network security actually is a part of the so-called cyber security. So cyber security is a broader area. So it includes cryptography, computer security, network security, security management, policy, and so on. So, but network security is definitely one of the key components, because nowadays everything will go through the network, right? So we use cloud, we use IoT, smart home, smart city, and so on. So all the communications will go through the network, right? So, but some of the topics within cybersecurity actually they are related. For example, in network security, we will still use some cryptographic tools. So actually, this is the first time in my memory. This is the first time I delivered this subject before CSCI361 cryptography, because in that subject, you will study all the primitives used in security protocols. So network security is mainly on protocols. We use cryptographic tools as a building block. So we try to build protocols based on the tools from cryptography. It's just like building a house. So you need like bricks, you need windows, so you need all those components. So we build a protocol using all the basic primitives, so which you will study in 361. So that means we don't need to go through the details of the crypto tools, but we need to know what are the properties provided by those tools. For example, in a protocol, so in a particular step, you may need to use encryption. In another particular step, you may need to use a digital signature. So you don't need to understand how it works, you just treat it as a black box. But you need to know where to apply each building block. So that's what we will study in 368. So later you will see actually you don't need to worry about the details of those tools, but you need to know what are the security features they can provide and where should we apply those tools. So that's the difference between 361 and 368. So even we study 368 before 361, this should be fine. So you don't need to worry about the details of those tools. So we will use some crypto tools to secure the network by designing some protocols. And then, of course, so how to implement those protocols, we will need to use some security programming techniques. Right, so actually there are a lot of libraries available, so in different language, in like C, C++, Java, Python, and so on. Right, so, but in this subject, for the assignment, you don't need to actually use those advanced libraries. I will just let you implement some simple protocol. So you just focus on the protocol itself instead of the some details about how big we need to choose the parameters and so on. So later I will introduce assignment 1, which is a programming task related to network security. And then assignment 2 actually will mainly focus on protocol design. You don't need to do any coding in assignment 2. So the knowledge required, so as I said, we don't need to have a very substantial understanding of cryptography, but I will briefly introduce what are the tools you need for this subject, what are the crypto tools you need for this subject. Right? So I will spend a little more time than before in crypto part, because you haven't started 361 yet. All right, so some basic computer network knowledge. So again, we will have a look at some network protocols, right? So it's different from security protocol, but they are related. So later, when we look at some network security standard, you need to understand the network protocol stack. For example, the TCP/IP stack. So you need to know which standard is applied in which layer. So you need to have a picture on the structure of the network protocol. Then you understand. So at which layer we apply which network security standards. So again, we will do some quick review on the computer networks, in particular TCP/IP. Right. So the programming, we won't look at the basics for programming. I assume if you attend this subject, actually you already have the background. So we will use C, C++, or Java in the assignment. So you can use one of them to implement your assignment. Okay. So the aims, there are 4 aims for general objectives of this subject. First is to understand network vulnerabilities and the network-based attacks. Right, so we will look at what are the basic attacks that can occur in a computer network. Of course, you can already imagine some very basic attacks. For example, eavesdropping. Like when you use your phone to communicate with others, the message will transmit through the mobile network. Right, so if someone actually have a receiver, they may be able to intercept the signal, and then if there is no security protection, then of course people can just basically tap the channel, and then they can obtain all the information you communicate with others. Right? So this is a basic attack, the eavesdropping attack, or a passive attack. And then some more advanced attack. For example, people can inject some message. Right? So they may try to impersonate you in a communication. For example, they try to impersonate you when you communicate with a bank, right? So we will study, for example, web security, how to make sure you can protect the communication between your, say, PC or mobile phone with a bank web server, right? So there are a lot of different types of attacks in the computer networks. Basically, if we assume a public network, then actually there are a lot of attacks. And then the protocols, they may also have vulnerabilities, or you can say bugs. Right? So the bugs can come from implementation process or the protocol design process. So many protocols, they are designed in a secure way, but when we do implementation, sometimes people can still make mistakes. Right? So in assignment 2, so you will also study by yourself, by searching on the internet, some vulnerabilities or attacks against some standard, some widely used standard. Right, so that's the first aim. You first need to understand what are the attackers, so what are their objectives, and then what are the different forms of attacks that can occur in a computer network. And the second aim is to apply a range of network security technologies for securing networks. So here we will look at the crypto technologies, and sometimes actually we also use some other technologies to secure the network. And then use appropriate security standards and network security tools to enhance security of distributed system. So the security standards, actually we will study a range of standards from the top layer to the bottom layer of the TCP/IP stack. As I said, we have different standards or mechanisms for different layers in a computer network architecture. Then you may ask, why do we need so many standards? Why can't we simply use one of them? So I will explain the reason, because actually there will be some trade-off between security and efficiency when we look at all those standards for protecting different layers of the computer network. And then evaluate, compare, and recommend network security applications and systems. So this will be related to your assignment 2. So you need to do analysis, do evaluation for some protocols, and then you need to compare. So what's the advantage between different versions of the protocol? For example, we can have different versions of Internet Key Exchange, right? So which is underlying IPsec. We also have different versions of SSL TLS, which is under the web security, so the HTTPS, right? So now we are doing a TLS 1.3. So that means we have TLS version 1, version 1.1, 1.2, and so on. So what are the improvements made by the later versions compared with the previous versions? All right, so here are the contents of the subject. So we will complete probably the first two and maybe part of topic 3 in today's lecture. So we will finish the first part, subject introduction, then some quick review on cryptography, and then the network basics in the morning. In the afternoon, we will look at the public infrastructure, the PKI, and then some like authentication protocols, right? So, so probably we will do 1, 2, 4 today. So we will do the public infrastructure and the protocol for authentication and key establishment in the afternoon. Then we will look at because Kerberos is a major topic, we will leave it to the class on Monday. So authentication system and Kerberos. Kerberos is widely used. For example, in this campus, I believe they also use Kerberos to do user authentication and key establishment. Right? So you need to log into the Kerberos server before you can access all the other services inside the enterprise. And then you will also have some key distribution mechanism to distribute secret keys between like the users, servers, so that they can have secure communication. Right? So we will look at Kerberos in Monday's class. And then we will look at, so Kerberos actually is part of the project developed in MIT in the 1970s. But now we have like a version 5. Version 5 is the current version, so that means that we have a lot of improvement in the last several decades for this protocol. Then we will look at a group of like a network security standard. For example, we will look at IPsec. So IPsec is an internet protocol security. That means we do the protection at the network layer, internet layer, right? And then we will look at the, for example, how the IPsec operates, right? How do you set, say, a VPN using IPsec? How does the protection work when you use IPsec to secure the communication between like two branches of a company, or how to secure the communication when you dial into the company network at home? For example, you may need to connect to the company network in order to do some firefighting or some tasks. Then you may need to set up a so-called VPN. So we can use, for example, IPsec to set up a VPN. And then we will also look how to do like this is actually protocol for the authentication and key establishment. So how to do the initial like a handshake between two devices or two gateways in a network, so that they can set up the IPsec protocol, right? So that's for the IPsec. Then this is on the like internet or network layer, and then we will look at the up layer, so which is transport layer. Transport layer, we have the transport layer security, TLS, right? So the TLS actually is a descendant of SSL, right? So sometimes you may see the term SSL, sometimes you may see the term TLS. So basically TLS is derived, is generated from SSL, right? So this is for transport layer security. That means, for example, when you do the HTTPS connection, then you are running the SSL TLS connection. That's a secure connection for like a web communication, right? And then secure shell. Secure shell is actually this is application layer security standard. So this is to protect the remote shell. So when you connect to a Unix server, so by default, actually all the original like a telnet, all these kind of service, they are not protected. So basically, people can simply eavesdrop or modify the communication. But then we have this secure shell application, which allow us to protect the communication. So nowadays, actually, we can also use SSL and secure shell to do this VPN. So you can also use a secure shell to set up a VPN connection. Right? So this is done using the so-called port forwarding. So we will look at the details how this port forwarding can be used to protect other communications. For example, secure shell is originally designed just to protect the remote shell. But actually, we can now use it to protect web, email, and other communication. So that means we can actually implement the so-called VPN using secure shell. And then the technique is called port forwarding. So we will look at the details later. All right, so these are like all the standards for related to TCP/IP infrastructure. So for the TCP/IP, we have different layers, right? So and then we have different standards at different layers. And then email security actually is application layer like security. So email is at the top of the TCP/IP stack. So email application, we have also some standard like S-MIME, right? And the PGP, we use this kind of standard to protect the email. So these are all related to the TCP/IP. So we have different standards for different layers. So later we will have a quick review on the TCP/IP structure, and then I will explain roughly, very roughly, at a high level, how we do the security at each layer. Right? So I will explain at a high level the principle used for protecting the communication. Then the details we will study in the subsequent lectures one by one. Alright, so then the last part we will look at the wireless and the mobile security. So we will look at mobile IP. So this is the extension of TCP/IP to support mobility. Right? So for TCP/IP, we actually have a fixed IP address for each device. But for mobile network, you may need to move around. So that means you may change the so-called point of attachment. You may change the connection point. Then you may be assigned different addresses when you move around. So in this case, we need to have a different protocol, communication protocol, which is the mobile IP protocol. And then we will look at the wireless and the mobile security. For the wireless security, we will look at the Wi-Fi security. So we will mainly look at the Wi-Fi security. How does the Wi-Fi security protocol work, right? And then some problems in some old wireless security standards. For example, the WEP protocol, the first security standard for Wi-Fi security. Actually, there are a lot of flaws in the design, and then we will look at what are the problems, and then how do we fix those problems in a new version. So nowadays we use Wi-Fi, the wireless protected access, like the WPA protocol. Then how do we address those problems? And then mobile security, we will mainly look at the telecommunication network, 3G, 2G, 3G, and 4G. Actually, 3G and 4G they use more or less the same security protocol, and the 2G use a similar but weaker protocol. So we will look at the telecommunication network security, mainly like the 2G and 3G, including 4G security. Of course, 5G is nearly, the standardization of 5G is nearly finished. So we may expect 5G to appear very soon, right? So maybe in the future, once the standardization of 5G is finished, then I may include the new 5G security inside the lecture notes. But at this stage, we still only study the 2G and 3G protocol. Actually, 3G and 4G, they have similar security protocols. All right, so these are the contents of this subject. So you can see we cover quite a few, most of the security tools and security standards we use in different computer networks, including the wired network, wireless network, mobile network, and so on. Right? So that's just a quick introduction about the contents of this subject. All right. So the textbook and the reference book. So textbook, we will use this book by William Stallings. Actually, in Wollongong, we use almost all the security subjects. We use the book from William Stallings, except the advanced subject for postgraduate student. For undergraduate student, we use a network security, system security 262, 361, cryptography. We use textbooks by William Stallings. So for this subject, actually, you can use this book. This book also covers most of the content for 361 for cryptography, right? And a related book is this Network Security Essentials. So actually, many of the content from this book are same or similar from the textbook. So I put this one as a reference book. And you can use the 5th or later edition for, I think the current version should be, I think 6th edition. So you can use the 5th or later edition for this subject. All right, assessments, there are 2 assignments and the final exam. So the assignment 1 has been posted on the Moodle site, so you can have a look at the assignment specification. Later today, in the afternoon, I will also quickly go through assignment 1, because after we finish the authentication and key establishment topic, actually you can start to work on assignment 1. Right? So assignment 1 actually is somehow related to the password authentication and key exchange in the class in the afternoon. All right, so the 20% for each assignment. Right, so and then assignment 2, I'm still working on it. So you will mainly work on the protocol design and analysis. That means I may give you some protocol to try to do analysis and then make some judgment whether the protocol is secure or is vulnerable to some attacks, right? And then you may also be asked to improve the protocol. So that means protocol design. You need to design, for example, a new protocol which is secure, right? So the due date for assignment 1, so it will be the 28th of April. That means after we finish all the lectures, you have 3 weeks to work on assignment 1. Then you have another 3 weeks to work on assignment 2, right? And the exam will be, of course, in the exam period. All right, so now all the assignments will be submitted through Moodle, the Moodle website. So that means there is no email submission, like no like a CD-ROM or like a hard copy submission. So you submit everything through the subject website, right? And then just pay attention to the so-called plagiarism. So actually, we treat plagiarism very seriously in Wollongong. So if you discuss with your classmate, that's fine. So for example, you have a protocol. So you discuss with your classmate about the security of the protocol, maybe also the improvement of the protocol, of the security for the protocol, and so on. But you need to write down the answer using your own words, right? So if you have very similar answers, then you will be treated as the assignment will be treated as a plagiarism, right? So we may also use some software to detect whether you have conducted plagiarism in the assignment, right? Okay, so for the final exam, so there is a requirement, a minimum requirement for you to pass this subject. So you must achieve at least 45 of the marks available in the final exam. So the final exam, we have 60 marks. That means you need to obtain at least 27 out of 60 in the final exam. So otherwise, you will be given a so-called technical fail. Right, so if you study other subjects, so this is a common rule for the UW subject. So 45% in the final exam. Otherwise, if you achieve, even if you achieve overall like more than 50 marks in the subject, but your exam marks actually is less than 27, then you will still receive this technical fail. Right? Okay, so that's some general information about the subject, like the content, objectives, assessment tasks. So do you have any question so far? No? Alright, so if there is no question, then we will have a quick look at the motivation and then some basic knowledge about network security. So why do we need network security, and what are the basic attacks? What are the security goals we want to achieve? So some very high-level idea about the network security. Alright, so computer network is vulnerable to attacks. Right, so as I said, there can be different passive and active attacks. Passive means the attacker actually does not modify or intervene the protocol execution. So the parties, they will still just follow the protocol execution honestly, and nothing is modified. But the attacker may passively collect the information, right? So this can happen, for example, if I want to eavesdrop communication when you talk to another person, right? Or when you send a message or email to another person, I want to eavesdrop the communication. Or maybe the attacker wants to do some traffic analysis. For example, the frequency, the timing. So all those information can be passively connected by analyzing the traffic in the computer network. So this is passive attack. Then active attacker, of course, they may inject message, modify message, or like a redirect message, and so on. So these are the active attacks. So we will look at these attacks when we look at the protocol, security protocols later. Right, so network security, of course, is important. It's actually a key component in the so-called cybersecurity, right? So because nowadays all the communications will go through a computer network. So nowadays you can hardly find a computer which is a standalone machine. Of course, in some specific application, you may still have some disconnected machines to ensure the communication is physically cut. But in most of the cases, we use public network like the internet to do communication, and network security becomes extremely important. Right, so there are many remote applications that will require network security, like e-commerce, mobile communications, internet voting, and so on, right? And including the cloud computing, right? Cloud computing means actually you don't need to do the computing locally. You still need to give the instructions to the cloud server, and the communication is still needed, and we need to protect the communication. Right, so the network security basically provides protection to networks and applications. As I said, there are different applications, different networks, then the requirements may be different. For example, in the mobile network, usually we may need some basic security, and in addition, we may also need anonymity, untraceability, and so on. Right, but in some other applications, we may not need those extra security properties. So depending on the applications and the network infrastructures, we may need to provide different solutions, right? So here is a very abstract model. So of course, in the reality, the model is more complex. The communication model is more complex. So as we will see later, in the computer network, so the architecture actually is very complex. So you have 5 layers in TCP/IP, right? So you need to go through the top layer to the bottom layer. Right, so when you send a message, you need to first pass the message to the top layer, then the message will be processed as a top layer and then passed to the second layer, and then it will be processed by a second layer and passed to the third layer. So it will go through many layers until the message is physically sent through the last layer, which is a physical layer. Right, so the physical layer will physically send the message. For example, by using optical signals or electrical signals, you deliver the message physically. Right? But if you look at the real protocol stack, actually it's very complex. However, when we study the security protocols, we decompose the stack into different layers, and then we study them one by one. So in this case, we don't need to consider a very complex structure. We just consider a very simple communication model. So this is basically the abstract model, right? So this just basically models the communication at one single layer. But in reality, actually, we have a more complex structure. So in this abstract model, actually, we have a few entities. So we have the sender, receiver. So the sender wants to deliver some message to the receiver, right? So then, in order to protect the communication, we don't deliver the message in plain text. We transform the message and deliver the message in a secure manner. That means we do some process on the information. For example, a simple example is you do encryption. You don't want other people to learn the content. Then before you deliver the message, you encrypt the message. Right? You use encryption like AES or S, triple dash, RC4 to encrypt the message. Then you deliver the message through this public channel. So the public channel, we assume is accessible by the attackers or the opponent. So they may access this public channel. They may try to eavesdrop your message, modify your message, and so on. Right? So the receiver, of course, will receive the message and then perform another process to recover the original message. Right? So during this transmission, a lot of attacks can happen here. Right? So if there is no transformation, then of course the message will be seen by any attacker, can be modified by any attacker. So how to prevent all these attacks? We need to do transformation here. Transformation here depends on the security need. For example, if you only want to maintain the secrecy or confidentiality, you can use encryption. But if you want to achieve the integrity, that means you want to make sure the receiver will receive the correct message, then you need to use some additional mechanism. For example, you need to use a digital signature or a message authentication code, which allows the receiver to verify the message has not been tampered with during the transmission. All right, so that's the security transformation, depending on the security requirement. So we may need to do multiple transformations in order to ensure multiple security properties. If we want to achieve secrecy, integrity, anonymity, we want to achieve all those goals, then you need to do a complex security transformation here. All right, so we will look at the details later. So we apply some cryptographic tools to perform the transformation. And then, all right, so during this process, actually, CM may also have some so-called trusted third party. So we will look at why do we need such a entity in the model? Because sometimes, so without this trusted third party, the two parties basically cannot negotiate or handshake, perform the negotiation or handshake in order to allow the security transformation. Why? Because if you want to have a security transformation, you must have some key involved, some secret key, not known by the attacker. So the key basically is an advantage compared with the attacker. Attacker has no key, so the attacker cannot eavesdrop or modify the message. If you have the key, then you can recover the message, you can verify the message. Right? So the key is essential to allow security. If there is no key involved, then the attacker has the same, basically have the same knowledge with the sender receiver, then the attacker of course can do anything. But if say only the sender and receiver they have the key, but attacker does not have the key, then this is an advantage of the users against the attacker. So they can protect the message, they can recover the message, but the attacker cannot, because attacker does not know the key. So how to enable this key to be established? Right? So of course you can say, I can I can call my friend and to agree on a key, or you may say, okay, I can maybe just pass a note to my friend to establish a key, but that's not practical in most applications. For example, if you want to make a connection with a remote like a server or your friend in a foreign country, then actually it's if you want to have, say, I want to set up a connection, secure connection now. So it's very impractical to use some physical method to derive this key. So, however, so if you have a trusted third party, actually this trusted party can help two parties to establish a key. For example, in Kerberos, I can give you some rough idea. So for example, in SIM, so we should have a Kerberos server. So Kerberos server actually is a server maintaining all the user credentials. So you all share a password with the Kerberos server. So you at least share a password with the server, Bob share a different password with the server. But Alice and Bob, they don't have any shared secret. So if Alice and Bob, they want to make the connection, secure connection, they need to establish this key. They need to establish this key to protect the communication. However, so they don't have a shared secret beforehand. So how to establish this key? So you can let the Kerberos server help. Because you have Alice has a password with the server, or has a different password with the server, or the server can help them to establish a common key. So in this case, the server is a trusted third party because the server actually knows the key. That means we must fully trust this server, because the server actually knows the key. So we cannot assume the server is attacker. We must assume the server is trusted. Right? So later when we look at the public infrastructure, we also have some trusted third party. Basically the so-called certification authority. Right? If you use HTTPS, you want to set up a server with HTTPS connection, you need to obtain a certificate. And the certificate is issued by a trusted third party, for example, Semantic. So previously, VeriSign was the biggest certification authority, and then the business was acquired by Semantic. So, and then actually there are now this many certification authorities. They issue certificate to the users so that they can establish a secure HTTPS connection. So in this case, the certification authorities are also trusted third parties. So here, it's somehow similar to the in physical world. When we have the government or government bodies, they are trusted by all the people. So they can issue credentials, they can issue certificates to people so that the people can verify each other using the credentials or certificates. Then we need to put our trust on those authorities, right? So these are the trusted third parties in the network protocol, network security protocol, right? So that's the basic communication model we will use. So basically we need to do several key components. So we have the sender, receiver, and the attacker. Attacker can access this information in the public channel. Then in order to secure the communication, we need to do security transformation. So the security transformation will rely on some key, right? So because if there is no key involved, then actually the attacker can also do this transformation. So without the key, actually the attacker cannot perform this transformation, so that we can prevent attacks. And to establish these keys, we may need some trusted third parties. So that's the rough picture about communication protocol, communication model, right? But as I said, this is a simplified model, abstract model. In reality, so actually the structure is more complex because we have different layers. Actually, we will consider each layer one by one by using this abstract model. So to simplify the analysis. Alright, so what are the security properties or goals we want to achieve when delivering a message? There are some basic rules, basic properties. So you can just remember the CIA, so confidentiality, integrity, authenticity. And of course, we may also have some other properties, for example, authorization, availability, anonymity, and so on. So we may have other requirements depending on the application or the network infrastructure. But in most of the applications and the security protocols, we will require the top three, the CIA. Right? So these three requirements actually are the fundamental requirements by almost all the security standards or the applications. Alright, so the CIA, C stands for confidentiality or secrecy. So this is the most fundamental one. For example, even 2,000 years ago, when Julius Caesar invented this Caesar cipher, so it's to protect the confidentiality. When I want to deliver a command to the soldiers or to another commander, then I need to use an encryption mechanism, for example, to protect the confidentiality. So that even someone intercept this message, they cannot read it. They don't understand what the message means. Alright, so this is to protect the secrecy of the message. And the integrity is to make sure the message will not be modified. So for example, you say you send a command to the bank, say I transfer $1,000 to Alice. So people cannot modify the $1,000 to 2,000, or modify the recipient from Alice to Bob. So basically, we need to make sure when the receiver receives the message is exactly the same as the one sent by the sender. Right. So this is integrity, and authenticity actually is origin of a message should be assured. That means that this message indeed comes from, say, Alice. Right? So you may ask, so what's the difference between integrity and authenticity? So they are different, but usually we use some tools to achieve both of them simultaneously. So the crypto tools we use can achieve these two goals simultaneously. So there are situations that we may be able to ensure integrity but not authenticity, right? So to give you a simple example, for example, I give like a message to the bank, say I transfer $1,000 to Alice, and then I protect this message so that people cannot modify it. But later, actually, someone can simply replay this message, right? So the person can replay this message, and actually, by only ensuring the integrity, you cannot achieve the authenticity because you replay the same message. So that means that even this message is protected to ensure integrity. If you replay the exactly same message, the server may not be able to tell whether this is a new instruction or a replayed instruction. Right? So these two goals, they are related, but they are different. So we need to separate them. But as I said, we can use cryptography tools to achieve both of them simultaneously. Right? So these are the three basic requirements: the confidentiality, integrity, and authenticity. And then we may also need the authorization, access control. So if you study 262, you should know the difference between authentication and authorization. Authentication means I verify this message is indeed from Alice, right? Authorization means actually after I verify the identity of Alice, then I will determine what are the actions allowed for Alice, right? So they are different. So authorization is mainly for access control. So this is a topic of 262. If you study 262, you should know all the access control models, right? So we have different access control models like access control list, ACL. We can also have to use like the BLP model, the Bell Abdurrah model, and so on, right? So these are the authorization is the main topic of 262. So in this subject, we will only touch authorization in one topic, which is the Kerberos. Because Kerberos is authentication and authorization infrastructure. So it will first verify who the user is, and then it will determine what are the operations this user can do. Right? So Alice may be able to read a secret file, but Bob may not be able to read the file, although they are both authenticated users. They are both legitimate users. Right, so in Kerberos, we will have some very light touch on authorization, but this is the main topic of 262. So we won't go through the detail here. So availability actually is also the topic of 262. Like we want to prevent denial of service attack, right? So so in some topics, we may still touch availability. For example, in the design of IPsec or IKE, we have some mechanism to prevent the denial of service attack, right? So in IKE, Internet Key Exchange, which is a protocol for IP security, IPsec, so we use some so-called cookie exchange to prevent denial of service attack. Right? So actually, we will study a similar topic in 262, which is a sync cookie, right? So we will still have some light touch on the authorization availability in some standard, but these two topics are actually covered by 262. So we will study the details of these two topics in 262. So I didn't list all the requirements here. So there are some additional requirements. For example, when we talk about mobile security, we also need to look at anonymity. So we want to prevent like the mobile device to be traced by attackers. So we need to use anonymity, traceability, and so on. So this is just incomplete list of the security requirements. All right. So corresponding to those security requirements, then we can look at the attacks. Right. So the requirements actually can be mapped to the attacks we want to prevent. Right. Because we have such kind of attacks, so we want to prevent these attacks and achieve those security goals. Right. So some basic attacks. First is interruption. of course, this is perhaps the simplest attack. When you want to deliver a message, I just cut the network. Right? So if I just cut the physical wire or physical channel to deliver the message, then of course you cannot deliver the message to another party. So this is an interruption. Right? So this will basically violate the requirements of. This basically is an attack against the requirement of availability, because the network is shut down. So there is no physical channel to deliver the message. So this is against availability. Basically, if the enemy can cut the network, then you cannot do any communication. So the service is unavailable. So this is against availability. And the interception, this is against confidentiality, right? So someone A wants to send a message to B, but the message may be intercepted by the attacker, right? Attacker may eavesdrop the communication. So this is against the confidentiality. And then modification. So when you Alice send a message to Bob, someone now intercept the message and modify the message and then send a modified message. So this is against the integrity, right? So integrity here means actually, if you have you can achieve integrity. That means the attacker cannot perform the modification attack. They cannot modify the message and then let the receiver accept the message. Basically, if you modify the message, the receiver will detect it and reject this message. So this is related to integrity. And of course, the last one is related to authentication. So this is a fabrication attack. That means that someone may inject a message and claim the message is from you. So attacker can inject the message and claim this message is from Alice. So if there is a mechanism that allows the receiver to verify whether this is message, the origin of this message is really Alice, then we achieve authenticity. That means I can make sure this message is indeed from Alice. But as I said, there are different types of attacks against like the fabrication, against the authenticity. For example, even the simplest form of the attack can be like a simple replay, right? So I can simply replay a message sent by Alice earlier. Then actually this message was indeed sent by Alice, but now I just replay the same message, right? So in this case, if there is a way for the receiver to detect this is not a fresh message, this is a replayed message, then we can prevent the attack, we can achieve the authenticity. Authenticity here means that we can make sure the message was indeed generated by the sender, and it was freshly generated by the sender. It is really a new message, a fresh message, not a replayed message, right? So you can actually remember all these attacks when you remember those security codes, because you can map the attacks to the security requirements for security codes, right? So for each specific attack, you can find the corresponding security requirement or security goal we want to achieve, right? So that's some basic knowledge about the security requirements or goals and then the attacks, right? So some common attacks we will see throughout the subject. So you can have like passive attacks, active attacks, right? So passive attacks include like eavesdropping attack, traffic analysis, right? Active attacks including the impersonation or masquerade attack, replay attack, modification attack in our service, like interruption attack, right? Actually, there are a lot of more advanced attacks, like the side channel attack, right? Side channel analysis. So the TLS SSL actually was found to be vulnerable to side channel attack, right? So you can actually find a lot of new attacks from time to time. Right, so the method, what are the methods to achieve network security? So in this subject, we will mainly focus on the cryptographic method. We apply some cryptographic tools in the protocols to prevent the attackers. Right, so the tools we will use basically include like encryption. Encryption is to encrypt the data so that you cannot see the content of the data. right? So this is a basic tool for security, right? So we will not look at the details, but we will use these tools as a building block in the protocol. We treat each tool as a black box. So here in the protocol, we need this tool. We plug in a security tool like encryption algorithm. But the details you will study in 361. 361 you will study the details, how the function works, like for AES encryption, S encryption, ISA encryption, and so on. But we will just use these as tools. Right? So that's why actually it's still okay if you study this subject before 361, because we don't need to look at the details. And then digital signature, again we have different types of signatures. Of course, in this subject, actually we won't use very advanced signatures. We will just use some very basic signatures, right? And we don't even need to look at the details. We just plug in the signature as a building block, right? But we will have a quick look at these signatures in the next part when we review the cryptography part. And the hash functions, right? Like the MD5, SHA-1, SHA-2, SHA-3, right? So these are the hash function can be used to construct the so-called message authentication code, right? So that's a tool for integrity. So you can use a message authentication code to achieve integrity and authenticity. Okay, so basically these are the security methods. All right, so the focus of this subject is to build protocols by using the tools or primitives I gave in the previous slide. So we design protocols so that we can prevent attackers using the tools we just looked at. Right, so the security protocols basically are the rules or the process for enabling the secure connection. Right, so we will determine, later we will see some examples. So in the protocols, we will determine, for example, the format of each message. So who should, for example, send which message. Right, who should send the first message? What's the format of the message? Like maybe even what's the timing requirement of the message, and then who should send the second message? What's the format of the message, and so on. So the protocols basically are just some formatted or structured messages communicated among two parties or different parties, right? So then we need to define the format, the rules of exchange, like who should do what, at when, right? So these are the rules. So it's similar to the network protocols. Network protocols, actually, we also define the rules of exchange, data format, and so on. But security protocols, we mainly focus on security, but it's consistent with the definition of a network protocol. So later, when we look at TCP/IP, as I said before, I will give some very rough idea how we implement a security protocol inside a network protocol. Say, originally we have a network protocol which is insecure, no security protection at all. How do we put in the security protocol inside the stack? How do we plug in the security protocol inside the infrastructure? So that means actually the security protocol must be consistent with the network protocol. So later I will give some rough information, general information how this is done. And then later we will study at each security layer, how do we really plug in the security protocol inside the network protocol. All right, so basically, security is about securing computer networks to achieve some security goals or requirements like confidentiality, availability, and so on, by using some security tools and systems. Right, so these protocols and systems will be the focus of this subject, and then how to develop these protocols or systems. We use cryptographic primitives, right? Like the encryption, signature, message authentication code, and so on, right? So we will look at all these protocols, or except firewall. So firewall actually is also studied in 262. So we put firewall. Actually, firewall is an important component in network security. By the way, don't put it here because firewall technique actually is not very related to cryptography techniques. So the firewall actually is quite different from other protocols, because other protocols we use cryptographic tools. Firewall actually we can do it without cryptographic tools, So that's why we put it in 262 instead of 368. All right, so that's a very brief introduction about the subject.